Domingo German just threw the 24th perfect game in baseball history. Let's break it down on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Thursday, June 29th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Chris the Welsh. Let's talk about Domingo German, who again threw a perfect game, 27 up, 27 down, 9 strikeouts, 17 swinging strikes on 99 pitches. This is coming off 2 starts where he allowed 15 earned runs total. Welsh, your thoughts on Domingo German from a fantasy perspective?
Very impressive. He used that curveball even more than he normally does. That curveball has a 40% usage. In this game, he just laid into it because it was so effective. Hit a 38% swinging strike rate, 41% CSW, 52% usage, and it worked great on horrible contact with the A's. Sell. I'm putting the shirt on here. The A's averaged 84 and 86 mile per hour against his fastball and his curveball. It was weak contact across the board. No diminishing Domingo German's incredible outing. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that has a 5 ERA. Expected stats tell the similar story. There's a good strikeout upside. What's the fantasy application? Be happy that you started him. Tell all your friends, I had him in my lineup. I had a perfect game. And then sell him. Sell the perfect game if you can. Doesn't mean he won't be great. Like I said, there's strikeout potential in there. Maybe this is start of a good run. I'm not the biggest buyer. I will just focus on the awesome celebration. Hopefully he was in the lineups, and anybody that's sending trade offers my way, I'll just remind them, hey, how would you feel about having a perfect game pitcher on your roster? I'll become a big old salesman. And what would you think there, fella? What can I get from you?
It's so tough, too, because talking about something that, again, this is history in baseball, but in terms of application for fantasy, we're still talking about a pitcher who has an ERA in the mid-4s. I will point out, I feel like maybe I was a little too harsh on him on our full-length podcast. In the first 12 starts this season, Domingo German did have a 3.49 ERA and a .99 whip, so maybe he goes on another run for the rest of the year or the second half where he does have fantasy viability, but the way that he's pitched recently, he's been very up and down. He's been prone to some blow-up starts, so it's kind of hard to trust a player like that. If you're just looking at next week, it looks like he's in line for 2 starts against the Orioles and against the Cubs. Both of those are at home. I think it's a little bit risky, but if you do want to chase that dragon and go for the 2 start, that is Domingo German for next week. Let's talk about Elly De La Cruz. Obviously, one of the most fun players, one of the most polarizing in fantasy baseball right now to talk about. You go on Twitter, you see everyone, should I sell high? Should I not sell high? It's so fun to own Elly De La Cruz. Well, let's talk about exactly that. So far this season, he is batting .301 with an .874 OPS. He has 9 steals. We know he has blazing speed. He got the crazy exit velocities, but he also does come with some warts. A 32% strikeout rate, a 63% ground ball rate. Welsh, how are you treating Elly De La Cruz rest of season value? What would you be looking for in a trade if you were to try and move him?
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. Like, I believe that it is worthwhile entertaining. And I said this very early on, how much bigger, and you can keep asking yourself, how much bigger hype could we get? He came up, he hit 117 homer. We all got excited. Then things started to taper. You missed your opportunity. Then he hits for the cycle. These waves, because that's also who I think Elly is as a fantasy player, especially in the early stages. There are waves because, what are those warts? Over 30% strikeout rate, over 60% ground ball rate. He is not hitting lefties right now, hitting 170. That's a bad split. So there's these warning signs, but he's this generational, amazing talent. We also saw that from Oneil Cruz, though. It took him 2 to 3 months in his first go to become this incredible last month player. Sometimes this is a process. So when you have that and people are overhyped and Elly De La Cruz can bring you back a top 25 player, I think you should listen. It's fun to roster him. You want to have it. But when people are offering you Corey Seager, you get maybe one of the best pitchers in baseball in Spencer Strider, Shane McClanahan, he's sitting in a range where even us, are considering, maybe I don't trade Manny Machado to do that, but people are selling out hard, and I'm listening. I'm not trying to actively trade him because I do think there's some rest of season projections that are still really in his favor. 16 homers, I think, in the 20 stolen bases for the rest of the year. Those are awesome stats. He easily could become a top 4-round fantasy player, even with some of those warts. But if someone's offering you Juan Soto, I'm listening, and that's what I think the advice really should be, is listen for the big offers on Elly De La Cruz, but don't just trade him to trade him because some of the few advanced stats don't work in his favor.
And I think you put that perfectly in perspective, Welsh. We're not just saying, okay, you have to try and sell high now because we think, he's going to implode or something like that. We're already valuing him as a top 25 player rest of the season. This is a prospect that just got called up. So I think we're valuing him adequately enough and giving him enough credit. But again, if you are trying to move him, just make sure you get a fair return for Elly De La Cruz. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.